Welcome to Innovators Anonymous. My name is Colin Weitzman. I'm going to be your guide today, and this is a real exciting episode that I'm really looking forward to. We have former national champion, All-American pole vaulter Matt Ludwig, professional athlete. Great to have you on the show, man. Really looking forward to the conversation. How you doing?
I'm great. I appreciate the invite. I'm excited to get to know you and talk about myself a little bit and, reach out to the audience and have fun with it.
For sure, man. Well, so a little thing that links us, is we're both vaulters. You're still vaulting. I'm a little bit retired by now, but one thing that's kind of always been interesting to me is figuring out what got each vaulter into the sport, because it's not your typical sport that you think about. It's not soccer, basketball, football. So how was it that you found pole vaulting and decided, like, yeah, I'm gonna throw my body in the air a crazy amount of height?
Right. For such a non-traditional sport, I think my entry to it, or my introduction to the sport, was pretty run of the mill. My older sister did it. She's 5 years older than me. She was a gymnast back in the day, and I had about 4 years of gymnast experience as well in my childhood. And so she was pretty successful. She jumped like 10.6 without turning. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, looking back, I'm like, for a high school girl, that was not too bad. She was pretty athletic. Yeah. And so she got some offers, but didn't want to do athletics in school. She wanted to focus on her school stuff. But my mom's like, hey, your sister did pole vault. She was pretty good. I think it's something you should look into, because I think you're strong enough. I think you have the gymnastics background. And so I figured I'd give it a try. And it was interesting. After the first year, I jumped 12 feet. And I jumped 10.6 all year. And then the very last meet of the year at districts, I jumped 12 feet and then took fifth. So I didn't make regionals, but it was a great experience. And it was kind of like, from that moment, I just decided, I was like, I think I'm going to be a pole vaulter. I didn't know to what level I was going to get to. I certainly didn't think I'd be here, but I knew that I was going to do it at least all through high school, because I was having too much fun with it.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun as a sport, and it's one of those that it doesn't matter how good or how bad you are at it, you have fun regardless. Like, it's not as like when you're jumping 10 feet, like, it's not like jumping 10.6 is just as frustrating as when you're jumping 16 feet and you're trying to jump 16.1. It's still super exciting no matter the level that you're on, which is made it really great for me to continue, at least for sure.
Oh, I love watching videos of people getting their PRs, especially like young high school kids. And it's exactly what you're describing. It doesn't matter if their PR is from 10 feet to 10.3. It's just like jumping up and down, screaming, yelling, and cheering. And I think that's just such the beauty of the sport. Such a great community and a ton of fun doing it.
Yeah, it's great because everyone's really supportive. It's like everyone, like when you're at a competition, like you'll see people, like right after you clear a bar, everyone, if you clear PR, like you'll see people high-fiving, cheering, and like people like from the stands, if they're not too familiar with the sport, be like, why aren't you mad? They just beat you. Why aren't you upset? But it's like everyone's in it together, because it's such a complicated, weird thing, and everyone's like super supportive, which is fantastic for sure.
Definitely. That and the decathlon, it's like you're just the closest friends with your competitors all the time.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really love about it. But so you said that your sister vaulted, and that's kind of how you got into it. When was it that you started? Was that in like middle school, high school, something like that?
Yep, freshman year of high school. Pretty sure I was 15 going during that school year. So 15 when I started pole vault. Hindsight, I would have loved to have started earlier, but we didn't know any better. We didn't know it was going to be what it was, and we just had a ton of fun with it along the way. I mean, that too, I would have probably joined a club a little earlier and seeked like consistent coaching through high school. I think I had good coaches. It was just every year was almost a different coach, and so a little bit difficult to work with sometimes. But I had a great experience with it. I still am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's always great still seeing because at my club that I would vault at sometimes, like there's a few of the older guys that are like in the masters meets that are like 50, 60, and like they're still vaulting. I'm sure you know Bell, Earl?
Yep.
Earl Bell, right? Yeah. He's
Bell, yeah.
what, 90, maybe 100 now, and he's still vaulting, something like that. Like,
98.
Like
that,
that's cool, like to see that. But like, so when was it? Because you said you wanted to stick through it throughout high school. What year did you realize like, okay, I'm starting to kind of do well. I want to look into doing this after high school, really think of it,
Right. I would say going into my junior year, because the first 2 years I had jumped like 10.6 all year my freshman year, finished with like a 12-foot jump PR in my last meet. And then the second year I jumped 14.4, also in my last meet of the year. So I was making pretty steady progress, but I was doing it in a seasonal fashion. So once spring came, I would do it for like 3-4 months with high school, and then I wouldn't pick up a pole till the next year. And so it wasn't until junior season that I said, I'm going to try this indoors thing. I'm going to try to pick up a pole like a little bit earlier than, what would it be, like September,
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm thinking about it, something like that. So much earlier than I would like March or April. And I went once a week training indoors at actually Tuesday nights at the University of Akron. It was a bit of a drive from Northeast Ohio, from Menor High School, from Lake Catholic High School in Menor, Ohio, where I went to high school. And so that was during wrestling season during indoors. So I'd actually do a wrestling practice because these Tuesday nights started later. So I'd do a wrestling practice, get out at about 5:30, and then drive an hour and 15 minutes to Akron to get started at 7, and then get the pole vault going there, have a practice, and then drive home after that. So Tuesday nights were insane, but that was when I really started dedicating more time to it. I got much better results, and then going into senior year, I actually dropped. I did football, wrestling, and track in high school, so I dropped wrestling and football and focused solely on track.
You had to be more like so tired if you were doing the wrestling and then right after going into a vault practice. I mean, like, you probably slept the second that your head hit the pillow there. I mean, how tired were you like going into those things, doing so many sports like that are high energy sports? It's not like you're just sitting there doing nothing. It's
Yeah,
high.
exhausted. I'd get in the car and I'd sleep from Menor to Akron, and then I'd usually sleep home too. But that was the challenge, and that was, I think, partly how I caught Coach Mitchell's interest at the University of Akron, because I would come and I'd be a solid vaulter. I'd compete with sort of the top 2 or 3 guys in that group who would come every week, but he would hear sort of my schedule or my plan with it. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, it's like an hour or so drive, but I'm also coming from wrestling practice, so I'm like cutting weight. I'm just got done like wrestling for 2 hours, so I'm like sore and tired from that, and it's like now I gotta plant the biggest pole in my life and try to jump. I think at the time like 15 feet, and so I think Coach Mitchell was just kind of shocked at he thought I was stupid at first. He's like, why would you wrestle and then come here? I was like, well, don't have a choice. Priorities, man. And he eventually got used to that and started giving me calls once he was able to, coming into my senior year, about, hey, you should come to Akron and pole vault.
Well, I guess that helps a lot when you're at meets, and especially during that time, because it's like you're not probably fatiguing as much, because it's like, well, I'm used to coming from pretty much doing double duty, practicing in wrestling and then going to vault. So, I mean, did you notice like that helped you a lot in competitions where it's like I'm not fatiguing as much, or did that not really have an effect for you?
I'd say so. I think almost in every sport, that was sort of my one of my best assets, was like my gas tank, I'd call it, where it's just like I could either take jumps and just take jumps, or with wrestling, I could just push people to the third period and then hammer on and still have energy then. And so I was like the workhorse through all my sports, because I wasn't the most technically gifted. I'm slowly working on refining all those things in any sport that I do, but I was more of a bull than I was a technician. And so I just brute force my way through a lot of different things. And through the process, I got really fit. I got in good shape. I was strong and fast, and had a good gas tank. So a lot of sports that helps with, pole vault
Yeah.
included.
Yeah, it's because especially with vaulting, you can be doing a ton of jumps, like, because the better you do, the more you jump and the more demanding those jumps become because you start off with the easiest jumps of the day, and then you're doing the hardest jumps of the day by the end when you're the most tired, you're on the biggest poles you are. And so having that gas tank is like crucial, especially with the vault, because it doesn't get easier as it goes at all.
Certainly not.
So take us through your senior year of high school. You're like, okay, I know I want to go to college. I want to do this. I want to continue. You're obviously finding a lot of success. What's that recruiting process looking like for you when you're looking to decide what school do I want to go to, and where's the best fit for you?
Um, Man, stressful, but it's always nice to have options. I would say, as far as how we could make sort of scholarship opportunities work, there was probably two or three realistic opportunities. University of Akron was probably the top choice, or right up along the top choice, and then the University of Missouri came in very late into the game, but I did a visit there and really loved it, and ended up going there my first year of college, and then they got rid of the coach there after that year, and I wouldn't have had a pole vault coach. So I was like, okay, well, I need to transfer because I need a coach, and that's how I made my way back to Akron. And for me, close to home because I'm in Northeast Ohio, so I'm like an hour away from the university. So that was really convenient. But man, in high school, it was stressful. Fielding phone calls, trying to organize visits, trying to decide what I wanted as an 18-year-old kid. That's really tough because I thought primarily out of my college experience that I wanted to go to a bigger school, a big campus. I wanted to get away from home relatively far. And I think I enjoyed all those things and I learned a lot. But also when I came to Akron, it was a little bit of a smaller school, mid-major. Sure, it lost some of the amenities like the athlete dining hall and the lower budget stuff. But being close to home for me, I realized I'm a homebody. I love being an hour from home because if I need something, I can just run over and come back. Or it's so much more convenient than being farther away. So man, that process was just a lot of learning, figuring out what I wanted, trying to put it down on paper, trying to find a school that fits that bill. It's really hard to describe though, because some places you just feel the connection and it just works. And when I got to Akron, when I was a sophomore, that's when I knew I was like home for me. I really felt that connection there. So man, it's a tough choice. I don't envy the current class of students that have to go through it because I know how hard it is. I try to guide them as best I can and offer advice and try to relax them more than anything because it's really stressful.
Yeah, it's not an easy process to go through. It's not like it becomes easier like the better you are, it becomes easier like the more developed you were, because I mean I wasn't like a highly touted recruit coming out of high school. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was good enough for our local area, like making it to districts, made it to states a couple times, but never like an all American or all state. And so even for me, like it brought different challenges where it's like, okay, well now I got to find some place where I can have a good impact both athletically and academically. And I can't go to a place like for you Akron mid-major. For me Akron would have been a stretch like athletically, and I'm like I'm not quite there yet. So it's like you got to find, it's like, okay, let's find the places where it works for you. And it's like I don't envy the athletes now at all, especially when some of them may not have their season and then you're trying to decide where to go to college. Like good luck with
Right.
that. It doesn't sound fun.
It's tough. The college environment right now is just tough. Everything is, there's a lot of cuts athletically and academically. The image or the way that schools work are just completely changing right now. So I'm just thankful and kind of lucky to be out of school, to have graduated in 2019 and not really experience the brute force of this because it's thrown people's lives in crazy loops.
Yeah, even just 1 year after in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't even have indoor nationals. Actually, it canceled the
Nope.
day of, I think, right?
Right. They had everybody there. They all did a training day. They got loose there, and then they kicked everyone out of the facility and told them to go home.
That stinks. That stinks. But I mean, what can you do? Well, so you're saying Akron mid-major, but you guys had a lot of talent for being a smaller school, not being like Ohio State or Michigan, like one of the bigger name schools, especially in the vault and in distance. I know you had Sean Barber, you had Murphy in distance. I mean, what was it like having so much? I mean, you guys had so much talent, it seemed like, on your track team. What's it like going, like, just being in the locker room with those guys and on the track doing their workouts?
Yeah, honestly, it surprised me because I don't think I was expecting that. I don't think I'd really done my homework or done my research enough on stuff outside of the pole vault. And so I knew Coach Mitchell was a solid coach. I knew Sean was having awesome success, winning the world championships in 2015, right as I was like getting out of high school. So all that stuff was really impressive about the team and about the coaching staff in particular. And then when I got there, I started looking around and I'm like, okay, let's look at the jumps because that's something that Akron was highly considered of, which I wasn't aware. And I was like, okay, we have some We have multiple like 26-foot long jumpers. We have 2 or 3 kids on the team at one time that are going 8 meters plus. They're going to nationals. We had a national runner-up the year that I won. I mean, we had a solid streak of 7 or 8 years running of scoring at the national meet, indoor and outdoors, consistently, like all Americans. And so there was only 10 other teams in the Division I that could do that, and the other 9 were all Power 5 conference schools. So we were the only mid-major, like non-Power 5 school to be in there. So I really didn't understand the quality of athletes that we had on the team, because everywhere I looked around, we had all-American talent. And so we'd go to the national meet, and we're a top 20 team, sometimes a top 10 team, almost every year, because we've got people scoring. It's really impressive. And being able to work with them, like Clayton and Sean, and getting their perspectives of sort of traveling the world, doing the professional athlete stuff, they're able to give a lot of different feedback and recommendations along the way. More so with Sean, as he was in my event. And so we'd bounce things back and forth and train together, and really push each other to higher heights. It was an exciting time.
Yeah, it was something that I didn't know either until I started really focusing and looking into track and field and seeing what teams are good. And I remember, so it was my first year. So it was my freshman. I guess it was both of our freshman years, but I guess I don't think you were there yet, 'cause you're at Mizzou. But
Right.
I remember going to Akron, and it was just like the places was it was great. It was one of my favorite meets to go to, because the facilities just like, it's huge. Like it was the first like raised runway that I had ever vaulted on, that wasn't like a street vault meet. And so there was like music pumping. It was really cool. And I remember, like, I think it was Sean Barber. Yeah, he was he was like a junior last year, and so I'm like, oh, he's gonna be here this year. But he went pro, which stunk. But I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get to see like the former world champion vaulter. Like, and I was like, oh wait, and then I get there, and then I think that might have even been not that year, it was the year after, when Clayton broke the record. But like I'm like, geez, what's this Akron team? Like, this team's crazy for this little small, or I guess like a school that I didn't know, pretty small
Right.
school. Like, guys had some serious talent. And yeah, it was definitely awesome seeing that you don't have to be at these Power 5 schools to be a Power 5 level talent, really.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, particularly with something like pole vault. It's just such a strange niche sport. And there's plenty of Power 5 schools that don't have programs, they don't have coaches for it. And there's plenty of non-Power 5 schools that have very successful programs. And so that's just one of that in particular that you got to do your homework on. But yeah, as a non-Power 5 school, I would put Akron up there as one of the best. I'd have to do a little more research about who would be competing. I know BYU competes really well as a non-Power 5 school, but it's a pretty short list, and I think Akron's near the top.
yeah, you guys have done pretty great job getting in some great talent. And then so love to take you back to that 2017 campaign, where you ended up winning the national championship. What is, I don't even know where to start. I mean, I feel like there's so many areas that you could start at, but I mean, when did what was it like? Kind of just take us back to that year, and what were some moments that stuck out into your head before you reached the actual championship that were like kind of noteworthy moments throughout that year, if you can remember any of that?
Yeah, for sure. For one, that year was the first year that I jumped 5 meters 70, which is the world A standard for things like the world championships and the Olympic Games for 2016 and prior. It wasn't until this year that they raised that now to 580, which is 19 feet. But so I jumped 18.8 and a half or 18.8 and a quarter, whatever it was. And it was it was our last outdoor meet before conference. And so I PR'd so close to the national championships and the conference meet and all this stuff. Funny enough, that was just a weird event. I broke a pole 2 days prior because I hadn't gotten a lot of sleep. I had an exam coming up, something weird. And I just was not doing well. And so I was coming from my full approach on a really, really small pole for me, and I just obliterated it. And so it came up and whacked me in the back of the head. So I had to go and get 3 or 4 stitches done and do concussion protocol, and everything checked out, and we were fine. But I was like, hey, can I compete in 2 days? And they're like, we'll see. I don't really want to clear you yet, but and we understand. And Coach Mitchell was like, he's going to compete. We want him. And so I felt okay. I just wrapped it up kind of weird looking, but competed and ended up PRing. And so I guess it like knocked some sense into me a little bit. I don't know what it was, but so that for me was a great experience. And then leading into the national championships, it was interesting because at no point did I feel like I was super nervous about it, even in 2016 at my first one. But when I look back at the film, for the 3-hour competition that went on, I don't think I sat down a single time. So I was like just pacing and stretching and doing all this stuff. And if I could have like gotten in my head of my freshman self, I'd have been like, dude, sit down, like breathe, take a drink of water, like chill out. You don't have to watch every single jump. Just pull up. And so coming back the next year, I was a lot more calmed down. I had learned the process of like checking in and getting there super early, where poles go. I just sort of learned how to jump through all the hoops. So that helped a lot in calming me down. But funny enough, I was getting so sick that year, just on and off for a couple weeks at a time. And so I was in this sick period, unfortunately. And then the day before we flew out to Eugene, I had to stop over at my landlord's and pay my rent. So I dropped the check off. And as I'm walking out, I hit this like low spot between the sidewalk and the grass, and I twist my ankle and I like sprained my ankle pretty badly. So I was like, are you kidding me? Like the day before I leave. And so it was all swollen and like black and blue and messed up. And I was like, oh, I can't tell my coach about this. He's going to flip. So I went up to the trainer and I asked him to wrap it and everything else. And I babied it 2 of the warm-up days. And then I got to the championship day and I just had to kind of step through it and work. But it was weird how all those things combined into, then of course we had bad weather. It was like a little bit chilly. It wasn't quite raining, but we had headwinds and they were swirling and crosswinds. It was just this terribly messy competition. I think this particular day, I don't know why, but it played in my favor. I think growing up in Northeast Ohio and having to jump in Ohio weather toughened me up a bit. And so a lot of people struggled with the wind, and I was able to, I came down and jumped like 550 or 560, like with a blazing headwind. And my coach is sitting there like all worried and nervous. He's like, man, look at the wind gauge. He's not going to have a good time with this, and just forced my way through it and cleared it. So that was super exciting. But it was weird how all these compromising things happened, and I was just took all that for what it was worth. And I was like, well, with my ankle sprained, I just got to run taller. I got to do things more correctly, because I'm not going to be able to just like sprint like crazy. I'm going to have to be better posture kind of thing. And being sick, I really prepared well with my sleep getting into it. I was really hydrated. So I prepared really well for that one. And I think part of it was because everything was just so bad leading up to it. But,
yeah. When things go awry like that, and it's just like everything's going against you, you have to focus on all the good things, and you have to prepare, because like if you didn't prepare for your ankle, like there's no way you could have competed. Like if you're just
right.
like, it's fine, we'll just walk it off, like it probably would have ballooned like to something that big. And like, yeah, I think that, like that's a great, story and thing that you brought up with the weather, because I think that helps me out as well. Like, because we're from in Maryland, we would compete, and we have like a giant open field. Like it's just a huge field, and so we'd have crazy wind, like sometimes crosswinds or whatever, just always coming through, and just being really annoying, and thinking like, hey, that sometimes helped with being able to compete at these meets where, it's adverse weather. And it's like, especially, at Eugene, it's pretty similar weather to Oregon. Not Oregon, Ohio sometimes. So like, that's not,
Right.
you don't get that in Florida or, Houston as much. So it definitely
Exactly.
was awesome. But,
I think the main moment, I guess, that was for me kind of crazy was we had like, I think it was 9 athletes in at 5:55, so like 18:2. And I had gone over on a first or second attempt. I think it was a first. I'm not entirely sure. But I just kind of sat down. I zoned out. I just took myself away from it. I didn't want to watch every single jump. I just sat there and just waited until things, like, we moved on to the next height and I had to get ready. And then all of a sudden they kind of announced that they're moving to the next bar. And it was like, all right, 2 competitors left. And I was like, what? And it was like Nate, myself, and Adrian Baez from Cincinnati, who jumps for Spain now. And so I was like, wait, is it just the 2 of us? And I was like, well, there was just this immediate perspective shift. And I was like, well, why not win it then? Like, let's try to do the thing. And so there was a really, really just I wouldn't say aggressive, but the mindset just changed from like, just stay alive, stay focused on what we're doing, to like excited, like we're doing this thing. Because it's just 9 people down to 2. So I had secured well above, I don't say well above, but I was within the podium range that I was like figured successful. And so I was so close to the top that I was like, either I'm first or I'm second today now. So I'm really going to try. And it worked
Mhm.
out.
What's the so what's like that mindset that you have when you're going to vault? Do you get that like tunnel vision like while you're vaulting, or is it just kind of like blackout for you? Because I know for each vaulter it's like a different thing. Like when you're actually running down the runway with your pole and actually completing the jump, like what's that experience like for you? Like what are you focusing on?
It's weird because it's been through a lot of different phases in my career. It's never really been the same, and it'll change from jump to jump sometimes. And so that's something I got to work on making more consistent. But a lot of times I would let my first or second jump kind of be like relaxed, but kind of lazy, and I would mess some things up. I'd mess up my approach, or I'd come up short and not take a jump, and I'd feel like I was wasting those attempts, which I kind of was. And then my third attempt would come, and I'd get super excited. I'd be like, all right, well I can't go out now. Like, and I'd tear down the runway and explode into a good jump. So I had to learn how to harness that every time, and I've gotten a lot better at it. And I would say when I'm jumping my best, I'm sort of relaxed with everything leading up to it, but sort of like as soon as I pick up the pole, it's just locked in. It's like kind of tunnel vision, and I feel the approach. I get a sense of uh, whether or not I hit my mid or sort of where I'm at relatively close. And then the last 3 steps is all about rhythm. It's really it's letting the hands guide the pole drop and then the feet follow. But it's really, there's no, I steer in, I suppose you could say, but it's not like, oh, I'm 2 feet out, I'm bailing, or I'm stopping, or I'm adjusting. It's kind of just, the adjustments are a little more natural, and it's all rhythm with the feet. And it's like 3, 2, 1, and everything
Hmm.
speeds up. And so when I'm really like clicking is when that stuff is just happening naturally, and I'm just nailing a good rhythm, because then I can jump up, the poles get really small, it's a lot easier to get on top of them, and it just happens super naturally. But yeah, just get locked in. And it's funny because everyone has like a vaulter face when they plant or take off
Yeah.
and run. Man, there's just this one, it's like my dad's favorite picture of me, but I hate it because I look like an old man. But I'm just like the meanest possible look that I could muster. I don't even know, just brows completely down, like lips kind of pursed over, and just dead eye locked into the box, because I was right in the last couple steps. And it was like, scared me when I saw it. I was like, oh my God, that doesn't look good. But everyone was like, no, dude, that's sweet. Like warrior spirit. You were like super focused. Like you were going to like crush that pole, and you didn't give yourself any other choice. And I was like, well, when you put it that way, it sounds kind of nice, man. So that's how I would say it's like super aggressive. It's weird because it's a highly emotional sport. And so I went through phases. I went through too much emotion when I was a little less experienced. So that led to inconsistency. So I spent 2 or 3 years at Akron leveling things out, becoming less emotionally invested, and just making robotic adjustments, being very to form as much as I could. And then actually recently I've been a little bit too robotic, and I'm not able to like turn things on and be aggressive and dynamic when I need to. So now I have to respect the energy again, and I have to kind of bring it back up. I'm at a point where um, I need to get on the runway, and it's like, I'm going to blow through this pole every single jump, and I'll get on the right pole by blowing through every single one until I find the right one, rather than sometimes I take jumps and I swing and I'm like, oh, well, I don't want to blow through. So I kind of like lean off of it. I feather it, I guess. I kind of pull
Hmm.
off, and then I come up short and I get frustrated. And it's like, okay, I should have just attacked it. But
Yeah, I think for me, the like whenever I'm jumping, and I'm sure it's the same for whatever sport it is that you're doing, like the best jumps were the ones that when people ask me like, oh, how was it? Like what was happening? And I was like, I don't really know. Like I it just kind of flowed. Like it's just like I'm not thinking about the jump. I'm not thinking about my run. It's just like you said, it's that flow, it's that rhythm of your feet hitting the track, and just you go up and over, and then next thing I know, I'm laying down the pit. I'm like, oh snap, I just did that. Like those are my best jumps, like all the time. Just not thinking about it, letting it go.
right, it is. It's so frustrating because you want to just like bottle that up and put it on every jump,
Yeah.
but it's so hard to do that, and it's so hard to stay consistent because every jump is just different, and it's a reactive process. It's not like it's a set plan, and after 0.5 seconds, then I'm going to do this and this, but it's all feeling. So it's like you take off, and it's like, oh, plant was a little here, I got to compensate now and I got to adjust. And it's just purely reactive. And so every jump's a little bit different. It's frustrating, but that's what's exciting too.
So one thing I definitely want to go back to earlier, you said that you did roll your ankle though, which is like, don't gloss over. That can be a huge injury, especially, was it on your left? Was it on your takeoff ankle?
It was on my right. Nope,
Okay,
not.
so at least that would have been even worse. But
Yeah.
so injuring your ankle, especially when you're putting that much force into the track, can be, can definitely be painful if you have to jump on that. Like, was the adrenaline just pumping this the entire competition, where you just didn't feel it at all, or was it like each jump was kind of taking a little bit out of you?
I would say the adrenaline carried me through the competition heavily, because the days leading up to it, the first day, I mean, I don't know if I'd call myself a big baby, but man, I did like 2 pole runs, and I just had to kind of make sure my coach was looking away and put my pole up. And I was like, that hurt. I was like, I don't like running right now. Hopefully this is better tomorrow, because that was not fun. Then I came back the next day and it was a little bit better, but I was just really, really limiting the pressure and the force that I was putting on it at the time, because I was like, I am really struggling to get through approach runs, and I have to jump like in 2 days. And so it ended up working out really well. And I think the way that it was structured at the time, it might still be structured this way. It's like it's an all male athletes day, an all female athletes day, and then male and female. So I ended up being on day 3 of this competition. So I was on the second male day. So I had this spare couple days from when the meet started to when I competed. So that was really, really helpful. I needed that a lot. But yeah, oh geez, I had a worse sprain at the start of that year that kept me out for 3 weeks. And it was more severe for sure, but I appreciated how much an ankle is important and how much it messed me up. And so then when I sprained it that day, I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, this is going to be so hard to work through. Cause then of course, I was sick as well. So I had to walk to CVS to pick up a prescription because I didn't have a car at the time. So I walked like 3/4 of a mile to pick up the prescription, and then 3/4 of a mile back on the ankle I just twisted. And I was like, man, this is just so good. But it all works out. I don't understand. And that turns out to be like my highest finish, and one of the top things on my resume as an athlete to this point. So it's just really interesting how the cards unfold, and you play the hand you're dealt.
There you go, man. But so obviously with these bigger meets, there's a lot more coverage. Like, of course, you're getting more TV coverage for a national championship than you're getting for a conference championship, smaller weekend invite. Like, did the competition change at all, or how was it post meet that might have been different than a regular meet that you wouldn't see on TV, because there's film crews or whatever? Just anything different from regular track meet?
Surprisingly, not too much. Occasionally, like for example, like with the national championships or the U.S. championships, for every competitor, as soon as you're done with your event, you have to go through what's called the mix zone, and that's just the media area where if they want to speak with you, you are required to be available for a couple minutes for people to get interviews. So the superstars like the Christian Colemans and the Justin Gatlins, like after every preliminary, semifinal, final race, like after every race, they're getting interviewed, or the Mondo types and the Sam Kendricks types for pole vault. So very common for them. In college, it was more like whoever won the event, and then depending on the location. So for 2 of the indoor meets, we were at Texas A&M in my time. So there was usually Texas reporters there who wanted to speak with the Texas vaulters or the Texas A&M vaulters, because that's who they're home. And so regardless of their performance. And so when I performed well, I got interviewed. And then there was one instance where when I didn't perform well, I usually didn't get interviewed. But there was one time where I did, because it was he was sort of a friendly follower of Matt Ludwig. So I was appreciative of that guy. But yeah, it's really pretty simple in the college level. Afterwards, in the post-collegiate level, really the same deal. It's not until you do something special on a given day that usually people want to get some words from you. But I think what's been more exciting, I suppose, or just strange, is that every level I've been at like the middle of the pyramid, and I try to work my way up to the top. And so we worked through that in college, and now post-collegiately I'm trying to work on the same thing. But the competition goes from, oh, this is a national champ or an NCAA champ, 1 or 2, 3 times, to now oh, this is the world champ from this year. This is the world champion from another year. This is the national record holders for 6 different countries in this field. And so that's turning into the normal, which is interesting and a little intimidating at first. But I think it's just as exciting when you look at a field of, let's say, 10 athletes, and they're all either national record holders or world championships, European champions, Olympic champions. And then you go out and you have a good performance and you put yourself in like the top 3 in the podium, and you're like, okay, I can hang. Like, these are the guys that beat me today, but these are the guys I beat today, but I still got to respect them. But it's just validating that you're competing and hanging and alongside the best in the sport.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling because I know for me it was a little weird when you might have the sense of invalidation, like you don't belong there or something. Like it'd just be weird, like, because I know there are times where I'd compete really poorly and I'm like, I know this meet was terrible, I didn't do very well, but then of course, like, you got your mom or your friend that's there and it's like, oh, you did so well, you jumped so great, and I'm like, I did terrible. Like like I made one bar and it was like, and I came in at a low height and that was it, and like I did awful. What are you talking about? I did great. And so it's weird, like, when you go back and you hear your friends that are like think it's so great, and then you're like, but it really wasn't. It can put into perspective, like, it's just because I didn't do fantastic today doesn't mean, I don't belong where I am today.
For sure. And it's a weird thing, being, because, man, when I compete poorly, I get really embarrassed. I get frustrated with myself, and it makes me more excited and ready for the next opportunity because I want to make up for it. But yeah, I'm very hypercritical on myself. And it's tough at first and it's tough for the people that your friends and family want to support you. Partly because they don't understand as much of it as you do. And so the appreciation or the passion for it is just a little bit different. And so, funny enough, I had a not so good performance, like, in my opinion, on Monday. And I saw a couple different parents, from the area that were like, oh my gosh, we saw you in the paper and we saw how you jumped. You look so good. We watched it and we were so proud. And I'm like, oh, thank you. But, for me personally, it was really, really bad, but I appreciate it. And so it's just that perspective to where the pole vault world and the track world are so small that very few people like know how well or how poorly you actually did. And everybody else just kind of looks at it. And if it's 12 feet or if it's 19 feet, they're like, that's crazy. You guys do that sport. And it's like, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's because it's such a small niche within a small niche of
Exactly.
track and field. So it's like, to many people, like the first time that they see pole vaulting, or whenever they see you, it's like that might be the only time they see the sport.
Right.
Like, because most people don't get a chance to watch it, and so it's weird when it's like, oh, thank you for that you enjoyed what I did, and it's like, but you're
Right.
like, I know deep down I didn't do really well, but you still gotta. It's still fun, like, even if you don't do bad, it's still fun to
And
fling yourself over a bar, like.
it's part of why, like, street vaults, for example, are just usually some of my favorite meets, because it could be in a train station, just downtown on the street, or in a shopping mall. You have all these crazy venues where hundreds of people just pass through, maybe thousands of people just pass through on their daily basis. They're just going to work or coming home, and then they see this big bar and people jumping off the ground. They're like, what is going on? And so it really, I think it helps grow the sport and get the attention on it out there, because most people just don't know. They've once you say pole vault, they're kind of like, oh, is that the thing with the stick and the other stick? And you're like, yeah, that's the one. But when they actually see it, they're like, wow, this is exciting.
It's exciting for whether it's you're watching the Olympics or you're watching like a local high school meet and you're seeing
Right.
kids jump 11 feet, like, because it's still like, wait, that's higher than like a basketball hoop. Like, how
Right.
there's no way that
Your
there's
whole
no way
body.
there's no way this 13-year-old kid can jump that. Impossible. And you're like, oh my God, he did it. It's like, it's super cool. But so I know that you had mentioned to me earlier that you had some issues 2019 with in conferences, or like, I think you said like a practice or a meet before it, with getting rejected and or having a kind of a big fall off the pit. What kind of what did that do to you, like physically and mentally? How did that kind of affect you going into jumps? Because I mean, vaulting, a joke that my coaches would always say is it's 80% mental and the rest is in your head. So
Right.
how
Right.
how
It's true.
how was that? Like, I mean, because getting rejected, or falling on the ground can be pretty
Mhm.
traumatic for anyone.
It was It was very tough, but I'll explain that briefly. I got to grab a charger.
No problem.
My phone's fine. Oh, perfect. Right here. I think we're back. I think it's charging now. We're all good. But
Perfect.
So yeah, that fall. It was the week before conference, outdoors, and we set up a raised runway on the outdoor track, actually, because our runway was not very good for use. We shut the track down. Actually, it needs to be completely resurfaced and remodeled, really. And so we actually ran all the track events at a different high school track, and then we ran select field events with the throws and the pole vault because we set up the runway at Akron. So it was this sort of split venue event. But regardless, we set up this runway outside, all the pits, all everything, even the massive standards that were such a pain to move. And it was looking good. Warm-ups were a little bit tough. I didn't love it, to be honest, but it started raining pretty badly. So the ladies got through their comp, but we got rained out in the warm-up pretty early on. So we had to go back inside. No big deal, but they want to get the event going. It's senior night. It's the last thing going on during the day. So they're kind of trying to rush things a bit. And so we go in, we start jumping, warm-ups are decent, and I get to 18 feet or so. And it's a third attempt. I go up and I do that weird spin thing that I hate, that I got to stop doing. And went over the bar and like felt it touch on my back, and I figured I hit it pretty hard and it was going to come off. And so as I'm like coming back down, I'm like frustrated because I'm like, man, this was like a wasted opportunity. This is not a good meet for me. I could have done better. And as I'm like halfway through these thoughts, I just like slammed the ground, and I was like, oh, I like bounced off the ground, just kind of like leaned on the pit, and I was like, that really hurt. And so I waited till that subsided a bit, and I tried to walk it off, and it took like one step, and I couldn't step, and I ended up falling. So I was like, all right, we're going to go to the training room. So like my trainer and one of my teammates kind of helped me limp in there, and they did a really quick assessment and ended up getting some imaging done a couple days later. But it didn't, it was a really bad injury, but it could have been a lot worse. Retrospect, when I look at it again and I see just how high it was, I cleared an 18-foot bar and came all the way down and landed just straight on the track. So right on like my left butt cheek, really. And so super lucky that it wasn't worse, but it was tough. The only reason, I don't want to say the only reason, but it would have hopefully been a little more protected, but because we had everything set up outside, when we came in, we forgot to replace one of the standard covers, that particular one on that side. And so there was all this spare track that was open that was normally covered with a pit, because that jumping area is actually very padded all the time, except for now this spare area, because we forgot to bring one of the pits back over. And we have a ton of them just lying around. We just didn't put it in the right spot. So that was a little tough, but I came out on crutches at senior night, and I took the mic and I was like, hey, thanks for coming out. It was tough. It's not how we want to see it end, but we'll be all right. And, back to you guys. It was a little awkward, but everyone was just glad I wasn't dead or severely injured. But that affected me terribly. I had trouble walking on it, period. And so I competed 6 days later at the conference championship, and it was incredibly swollen. It actually took a week to even start bruising, which was weird to me because I was like, it's just weird. It's not bruising. And then one day it was just like black. I was like, okay, there it is. But man, yeah, that conference was tough. I came from 7 lefts, but it was like walking about as like the walking jog about as slow as I could have done, because it was super painful. And then taking off was really the worst part. Like I could get a little bit of a run going, but it was that force onto the ground that I just winced like every single time I jumped. So I ended up jumping 17. I took second, which is cool with me, but we needed the team points, which is why I jumped mostly. But one of my teammates won the conference championship, so that was good because we have this streak of indoor and outdoor conference championships in the pole vault, and it was 12 years strong. That was the 12th year. So for 24 straight conference championships, an Akron vaulter has won the men's pole vault.
Wow.
Indoor. And so unfortunately, the indoor one broke last year. The Kent State vaulter in our
Christian,
conference.
right?
Yep, Christian.
Yeah.
He beat our guys indoors, and then outdoors. We didn't have it. Right, we didn't have outdoors. So unfortunately that streak's ended. We still got the outdoor one going, I guess, but so we preserved that, which was cool. And then 2 weeks later, regionals, just stay alive, got through it pretty well. 2 weeks later, nationals, didn't perform great, but I think the moral of the story is it just took so long. And it wasn't really until the end of that year. The U.S. championships were really late because they had the world champs in Dubai.
Yeah.
And so, or Qatar, Qatar. And so it was like a September national championship, which was super late. Or maybe it was late August. But did that. That was probably the first time I felt sort of back to normal, back to like 100%. And this happened like the end of April 29th, I think. And so from April 29th all the way to the end of August, that's 3-4 months till it wasn't really bothering me anymore. So for every meet in between there, I mean, it was a very conscious thing that came up daily. That was painful, tough to work through. My range of motion got worse. My flexibility was bad. So that was really tough, actually. That was probably the worst injury I'd had for a while. But now 100% functional. I have, unfortunately, like some atrophy, like really bad atrophy on that side. So it's like left butt cheek is like flat and right butt cheek is like full. And so it's like disheartening. Not that I like check myself out, but if I ever like pass the mirror, I'm kind of just like, oh, that doesn't look good. So that's, an awkward thing, I guess. But oh well. I'm safe, I'm healthy, and I'm over it now. But at the time, it was really scary.
Yeah, I mean, falling from any height is awful. I mean, my worst fall, I guess you could say, was my sophomore year. 100% my fault. So we were vaulting, and so our high school really didn't have a vault coach. We had a club coach that I would go to and vault at, and so I would kind of help out the other high schoolers that didn't really have a coach, because I knew my way around the vault enough where I'm like, okay, I can give you pointers on, it's like, okay, you're a freshman, sophomore guy, you're not vaulting terribly high. I know enough about like how to straight pull or bend a little bit. So every once in a while, like I would just decide to vault. And one day I was vaulting, and so I knew better, but I decided, you know what, I'm going to grip up on this pole 1.5 feet. I don't know why I thought this was a good idea. It wasn't, because for those that don't know, typically on a pole, you grip up in like 3-4 inch increments, like maybe 6 inches if you're getting really crazy, but mostly it's like one handhold. And so I was like, I'm just going to grip the top and see how it goes. And so I go up and I jump, and who would have guessed it? I go right up, it bends, and then I'm sitting up there, and it's like, well, you're going straight down, buddy. You don't have enough speed. And I'm like, crap. Go right back on the track and like hit my ankle. I'm like, ow, like that kind of hurt. Like taught me quick not to, just improvise and do whatever you want. And that it's not a very forgiving sport.
Oh, it's surprisingly like dangerous. It's okay, and you can manage the safety stuff when you get more experience. But when I watch some high school competitions, sometimes I'm like terrified. I'm like, oh God, don't do that.
You'll hear the gasp of people watching.
Right. And I have higher stress because I know that they're less experienced, and that if there is a potential risk, like it's more likely to happen, which is scary. But I think the last thing on the fall or whatever, a little while later, I was going up for a team meeting, which we have on the second floor of the field house.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's high up. I don't know exactly how many feet, but I'd say maybe 14 or so. But you go upstairs, and you have this nice view of the track. It looks really pretty. And that year, actually, we had gotten, a year before, we'd gotten these really, really pretty like tower standards. So they're the ones that instead of like cranking up and down, it's just a twist.
Yeah, they're real nice.
But they stand like 21, 22 feet tall at all times. And all you're doing is winching up or down the peg. So they're all labeled on the side. You can see every 2 feet, or every foot, I guess, where it's marked. And so standing on the second floor, I would look out over the track, and I saw the 18-foot line. And there was these, right about the same height was these like air conditioning units, I guess is what they look like to me. But so those were consistently high all the way across. And so the one that was right at me was right at eye level as I was standing on the second floor. So it's for example, you walk out to like the railing, and you imagine, this is a little morose, I suppose, but it's like you're on the other side of the railing, you look and you're saying, okay, there's a bar here. So I'm going to jump. I'm going to put my whole body over this. And then I'm just going to land on my butt on the ground. And it was a really scary thought to like, that was when I realized how lucky I kind of was to not be injured more or have like severe like spinal damage or something. Cause I looked down, there was no way I was about to jump down then and do that. And so I looked and I was like, that happened. That's scary, but it all worked out. So we're all good now.
You don't think about how high it is you're jumping until you're at that height and
You do it wrong.
seeing what it is. Yeah, it can be a lot. So I mean, so it sounds like you had a little rough start going into your professional career, because that was what your senior season. So what was it? Who went into the decision, or what were your thoughts of going pro? Like, when were you like, I want to give this a whirl, let's try to make the best of it, let's see what we can do? Like, how did that decision come about, and how did that that first year go out for you?
Yeah, it's it's an interesting world, because unless you're someone that's sort of breaking records and being exceptional at any given time, most collegians aren't going to really consider going pro unless they get some awesome offer. And then they're like, yep, I'm done. But afterwards, well, I knew I didn't want to stop, that's for sure. But I was jumping the World Championships qualifying heights and the Olympic qualifying heights. So I was in the range. I showed that I could belong, I could be there. And I was only getting better every single year. So I think that was mostly the reason. It helped a lot that I jumped 19 feet 3 or 4 times my senior year, because that just reestablished that I could be consistent. I could do it. It wasn't a fluke thing. And those types of jumps are going to help have a long-standing career in the vault. And so it was really interesting. I kind of just started asking a bunch of questions with Sean Barber's agent, and he just kind of brought me on the team. And he's just like, hey man, we have some meet opportunities here. This is the package, like these are the payouts. We got travel stuff covered for you. So, if you go and you take first or second, you make like $1,000. And I'm like, dude, I'm there. Are you kidding me? Like, that sounds awesome. And so I get this, like, I get a free trip and I get paid. Like, are you kidding me? So it was a lot of sort of, I guess, what would be considered relative smaller opportunities at first. But for me, any opportunity was just everything, because I was really nervous going into 2020 that I wouldn't have the collegiate schedule. So I wouldn't have consistent competitions. So I wanted to make sure I'd be able to get to meets. And I ended up having a spectacular indoor schedule. I really couldn't have asked for better. And so a lot of that was set up through my agent, which I'm super generous for. So that's really been, you have different worries. There's a lot of things that are taken care of at the college level that you never think about and you're not supposed to think about. And then there's things that you just have to learn. You learn how to travel. You learn how to get your poles where they need to go. And in my case, drive a manual stick shift car through Europe on the Autobahn when I had never done that. So I was like, oh God, this is gonna be bad. But it works. It all kind of works itself out. So it's a little more stress in some different areas, but jumping and pole vaulting is when things feel the most natural and feel the easiest. Yeah, but I guess the goal is just keep jumping high and work towards something like a shoe contract, some kind of sponsorship deal that the top level athletes have. Because right now we only have, it was formerly just 2 Americans with Sam Kendricks and Cole Walsh, and now Chris just got out of school and he just signed with Nike. So now we have 3 Americans on any male sponsorship endorsement with shoe companies. And yet we have 12 athletes that have jumped the Olympic standard in the first 2 months of the season. So it's like, it's just so hard to get attention and get endorsements at that level. But it's weird as you build your resume. So in my case, the 2020 US Championships helped drastically. Is a big check mark thing that I could put on my resume. And so for, I don't want to say marketing purposes, but for getting the opportunity to get into meets, which is sometimes just the hardest thing, they can say, oh, hey, my agent will be like, hey, check out my guy. He jumps 19.4. He's the current US champ. He's a really attractive dude. He'll make your field better. And so they're like, okay, we'll bring him on. And that gets me into the door to higher paying competitions, better competitions. And then once I get to travel, for example, off to Europe, I can start to make a name there if I perform well in those competitions. So I was personally really proud of my first European opener. I went to 2 meets in Germany and 1 in Poland. And so of those 3 meets, I finished first, second, and second. I jumped 18.8 at my first meet, and that was the highest European opener by any American ever, tied
Wow.
with Tim. So that was kind of exciting because this was my first time ever going international, and I jumped 570. And they started thinking, they're like, of any American, the only other person that's jumped that high at their first European meet, because they normally expect you after such long travel to just tank and have a really bad first performance and then maybe pick it up. But
Uh-huh.
Tim Mack and I jumped 570 in our European openers. But the last meet in Torun in Poland was when Mondo broke the world record for the first time. And so I got to be there in person. I got to watch him jump. I was like catching the steps for him because as he eventually took over the competition, he's like, hey, Sean and I were there together. He's like, do you mind, Sean, can you get my mid? And Matt, can you catch my step? And we're like, yeah, dude, sure. So we kind of would conference after every jump, and he'd be like, I don't know why he was asking us this. This is way too much stress on us. And he's the one jumping. He's like, hey, you think I should go up a pole? It's only like a 0.4 jump and whatever else. And he's like about to take jumps at the world record. And we're like, what? Don't ask us. Like, I don't know. You jump really high. You could probably clear it. But it's like, man, don't make this our decision. And so, but we, whatever, helped him a little bit through it. And he did all the hard work and had a great day. But what was stressful too was the day before I competed at a meet in East Germany. And so we had an 8-hour drive from East Germany to Rouen. So we got done at about 10 o'clock from this competition, drove through the night, got to Poland at 7 a.m, caught like 5 hours of sleep, and then got up and got ready for the competition the next night in Rouen. So I was destroyed physically. I was like exhausted. But in that drive, actually all the way from West Germany, from Dusseldorf, we traveled Mondo's poles all the way over to Poland for him because we were driving. And so that was my credit as well to the event, as I was like, oh, I helped Mondo jump the world record because he wouldn't have had poles otherwise.
Wouldn't have happened without you. We don't have a world record without you, man.
That's
I
right.
mean, those are some crazy stories who would have thought that the sport of pole vaulting will bring you out to Poland, doing European campaign, getting all the, being with the world, being asked if you should move up a pole from a world record holder, like bringing you all these
Right.
things. I mean, like, so what was it like going from, you're doing these pretty much regional meets, maybe national meets in college, to you're doing international meets. You're going across country, across the world with a 20-foot bag with your poles in it. Like, what's going through your head when you're going to these different countries and vaulting, like, with some of the best athletes in the world, especially?
Terrifying. It's really, I do a lot better now, but the first trip, I got to Germany, I sort of forgot, or I didn't prepare well enough that I didn't have a SIM card and I didn't have a data plan or anything for international data. So it was like, once I landed, I needed to be on Wi-Fi, or I had no texting, no calls, no GPS, anything really. So I was just kind of not lost, but I was just there. And so that was first issue number one. And then issue number two was that I didn't prepare all of my information, like for customs, for immigration and everything. So I get up to the booth and they check my passport and they're like, hey, all right, purpose of travel kind of thing. I'm like, oh, work related. I'm a track and field athlete. I'm here on some professional meets for about a week. I'm like, okay, the address you'll be staying at. And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I know this is Dusseldorf Airport, but I'm going up to Bochum, and there's a hotel there that I have reservations at, but I don't know the name of it. I don't have the address. Like, it's in my phone, but I can't get it right now. And so they were like, gave me a weird side eye look. They're like, okay, like, who are you staying with? And I was like, oh, these people. And they're like, okay, and who are they affiliated with? Like, what's their company? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know all the information. And so they were just like, they were probably just like, yeah, just go away. But also, I was just super stressed out. So I was like, what if I don't have answers? They're going to send me home.
Mm-hmm.
But it all worked out. And then I think the biggest concern after that was I was scared to go out and like find food or even just walk around a bit because I don't speak the native languages in those countries. So Germany and Poland, I tried to study a little bit, but not nearly. I didn't have enough. I wouldn't say I didn't have enough time, but I didn't know nearly enough to keep up. And so that was a little bit scary. But what I came to realize by the end of the trip is a lot of people know enough English to get you where you're going. So, for example, in Dusseldorf, I missed the train to one of my locations. So I took it out to the arena, and then I took the from the arena back to this bus stop, which should have been right outside my agent's apartment that he was staying in. So I was like, okay, I just got to get out at this stop at Kaiserwerther, Kaiserwerther Strasse, which is like street, Kaiserwerther Street. And so I was like, all right, I just got to get off there. And as I'm looking at all these names, none of those are coming up. And I was like, kind of checking my watch. And I was like, all right, I've been on here for a while. This is maybe concerning. And then we started going underground. And I was like, oh no, I didn't go underground coming here. This is bad. I messed up. So then I got off at one exit kind of just randomly. And I looked around and I went up a level in the train station, like underground. And I was still underground. I didn't get to the street. So I was like, oh my God, I'm so lost. I don't want to keep running away. So I went back. I got back on the train. And I took it all the way to the Dusseldorf station, the main station, like Grand Central Station type thing. And I was like, oh, now I've done it. I'm just so lost. So I went up one of the guards or whatever. I was like, how do I get to this one? And they're like, all right, get on that one, go back, get off at this exit. I was like, okay, thanks. And so as I was coming through, the reason we left during the day, I came back during the night. So a lot of the landmarks I was trying to use, I couldn't see. And so one of them was the name of this restaurant. And so as we're coming by, we're driving up to it and I'm looking out and I see the name of this restaurant. And I'm like, hey, that's a pretty weird name for a restaurant. And then it was like light bulb. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. I'm here. And then I got off the exit and made my way home. So that was my stress. Cause I wanted to go like downtown the next day and go through the marketplaces and kind of thing and experience the culture, but I was way too intimidated to get back on the trams. I was like, no, I'm just going to stay today.
It's like, yeah, let's not get lost and, not have to, not know where we are. But yeah, it's got to be cool. Yeah. You're going to all these different places. Like, what was your favorite meet that you competed in? Other than, of course, like barring like, okay, of course you won the national championships. And so those are obviously a lot of fun, but besides that, like what were some of the, like your favorite, your favorite meets that you're able to compete in as an athlete?
There was a lot of unique ones, particularly the post-collegiate stuff, because event organizers just really want things to be exciting. Yeah. So sometimes they put a lot of things together that are not even track and field related. So the first meet I did in Europe, in West Germany, was called the Viactive Race Arts, and it was an urbanatrix compilation of all these different events. So we had pole vault, long jump, and then some 60-meter sprints and a 60-meter hurdles race. So for men and women, whatever. And so in between events, in between, let's say, a race or a couple different jumps, they would then turn off the lights and there would be this different performance. And they had some BMX like trick teams would come through and they would do like tricks. They'd jump up on the runways and jump down. They'd race runways. They had ramps. So they'd wheel these ramps out. They'd do like a series of flips for a couple minutes and then they'd disperse out. We go back to track and field, and then they take another break, and they had a dancing crew do another performance, and then head out, and then they had one more. But it was just this mix of not even track and field related things, but the audience loved it. They sold out. Like of the 3 competitions I went to, they sold out 2 of them, and Tarun was probably my favorite meet ever because that was in an actual like large indoor stadium, which I don't know, 5,000 to 10,000 spectators probably, but for a track and field meet. You have that at national championships or like Texas relays, but they're all very spread out. Yeah. And it's all just a huge facility where everyone's spread out sort of like horizontally. This one was, you had the 200-meter raised track and very little walking space on the side. And then you started hitting the stands and it was like a basketball arena where it just went up. And so I'm like looking up in what would be the nosebleeds and there's people all the way back there. And I'm like, this is nuts. This is like a basketball game. And I feel like a superstar, which is a little intimidating, but like, this is crazy. And they did a really professional like announcement where you walk out in front of a camera and, wave or do whatever. And they announce some things about you and that I represent the US and onto the competition. That for me was like, it was part humbling, but part just like validating and exciting. Cause I was like, this is like, I watch all these events, whether it's championship meets or whatever else, but international competitions. And for me, that like intro sequence is like the pinnacle of making it in a way. And so when I looked back on like the YouTube video, like the replay of the meet of the live stream, I like on my phone, I like screen recorded my intro because that was like the first one I'd ever had or done. that was like that. And it was spoken in Polish, but it was like super exciting for me. I like still look at it. I'm like, damn, like that, I did that. That was kind of cool. But I don't know. It's really humbling. And I'm just like super gracious to be in the position I am because I don't know. I mean, as of now, I mean, it is very formally like my job, like distinctively everything that's my source of income. Like that's my work. It's my job. And so I take it very seriously that way, but man, it's like I've never worked a day in my life. It's pole vault. You know, I
Yeah.
get to have a ton of fun on a daily basis, and I get to travel and compete and do what I really love doing, and make a living, at least for now, doing it. So I'm just like incredibly grateful for that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's that's got to be crazy. Like that's almost every, especially track and field athlete's dream, because there are very, very few amount of meets that you're gonna get where you feel like you're that superstar, because because it just
Mhm.
doesn't, not a ton of people come to meets for whatever reason. And so it's yeah, it's something that's I'm really, excited. I get excited just seeing those meets, because I remember I got the privilege to go to the Olympics in 2016 to watch, and seeing Sam Kendrick's vaulting, and it was
Yeah.
so cool because I'm sitting in the middle with all these people that are from Brazil, and so like they're all cheering on Tiago, and like
Yeah.
I'm cheering on Sam, and so when Sam like clears a bar, I'm like, yeah, let's go. And then everyone else is like looking at me like, oh, shut up, you dumb
Who's
American.
the
Like, it's like, no, we want Tiago to win. I'm like, no, it's so funny. So it's like,
Mhm.
having that, high energy is really cool. But so for you, like obviously there's a lot of talent in the United States with the vault. Like there's a lot of, like you said, there's 12 people that have already hit like with the A standard, and
Mhm.
are very, very talented. Like what's the future looking like for you, especially with COVID kind of putting a hampering on the outdoor meets? What do things look like for you as you get ready for the next phase of your vaulting career here?
For sure. I'm honestly in pretty bad physical shape. Like, I guess bad is not a good term. A lot worse than I've been the last couple of years, at least for this period of time, because facilities have been thrown off, training cycles have been thrown off. And so it's really been like, all right, let's just do the best that we can and try to, I don't want to say scrape out what we can from this season, but like my priorities list for the rest of the year is just stay healthy as number one. So don't get hurt anymore. And then
Don't roll
just,
your ankle going to the
right.
CVS.
And it's like, do your best to like place well and jump high in the competitions that I'm in. And, ultimately one of the last ones is just like, make money and have fun. And so it's weird because nothing's scheduled. I think that's the main concern that makes it such a weird season. Normally you have a good schedule, you have a good sense of where you're traveling to, what meets you're going to.
Yeah.
And sometimes those things change and whatever. But now it's like, initially the idea was that I would leave tomorrow for a 3-week trip to Europe to get a couple meets in. And now travel's I'm pretty sure it's still banned for like visitors to Europe from the US. I would have to get some sort of exemption for work-based travel. It's a very like complicated time. And I mean, ultimately I just may not even end up going. And so things are just so up in the air, and it's very short notice. I got a call from my agent like a week ago, and he's like, hey, ultimately I'd like to have you leave on the 20th. And that's, checks calendar 5 days from now, is that something you think you could do? And I was like, I mean, I'd like to, but is that confirmed? And he's like, no, not yet. I'm still working on it. It might change, but that's what we were looking at. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. So the classic story for some of the older vaulters that I've talked to that had that career success, they're like, no, I was working a job and I got a phone call and they said, hey man, you want your shot at Europe? You leave in 4 days. You got to drop everything for 2 weeks, whether it's your job or whatever else. And people literally have to make the life decision sometimes. Like, do I leave my job, like quit my job because they won't facilitate me being gone that long to go pole vault and take this opportunity? And like 9 times out of 10, every person has took that opportunity and not regretted it. So that's it. It's crazy to me. But I think with COVID season and how everything's looking, it's just stay healthy, stay safe. Which I don't fear traveling. I'd actually like to get back to traveling as soon as possible, but I understand the precaution and the safety risk for everybody. But next year, getting into Olympic season, Olympic year, that's when everything kind of hits the wall. hits the ground running. And so my goal is really to get back into the University of Akron facilities as soon as possible, because I train better there. I have all the facilities I need in one location. I can be there 5-6 days a week. I can get amazing work there. I can be there for 4+ hours just getting work in. So that's really going to be the key to me getting back on the training cycles that I need to be, because as it is now, it's like you'll jump twice a week at one facility, but then you'll just have to drive up to your local high school and see if you can get a workout in at the track before they kick you off. And then the weights has been hard. It's been on and off with some different places. So it's a bit of a struggle, but when I look around, all the athletes have been going through similar things, and there's very few that have been able to stay consistent in really good training. And I mean, those are the guys that are performing right now, between Mondo and Sam in particular, and like Sandy Morris, a little bit Katarina. So these are people that they're seasoned veterans, they're experienced in the sport, and they're getting their work done right now. I think on a more of a developmental scale, someone named Austin Miller, he went to High Point University.
Yeah.
Professional vaulter now, big, tall, baldish guy, but super funny, great character. He's a guy that has just been crushing it the last few weeks. Like even since the shutdown with like in March and April, he has been getting his work done like nobody's business. He's been super fit. It's been awesome to see him so dedicated. And so his first meet back, he comes out and PRs and jumps 573. So he PRs by like 7 centimeters. Took some really good shots at 19. I was like, dude, you're going to do this today. Like you're ready to, I don't want to say join the club, but you're ready to be there. Like you look good. Yeah. So he was like the example of getting all of his hard work done. He gets back in his first meet out of like the quarantine period or whatever, and PRs, and he just looks spectacular. And then was really struggling to get down the runway, because I was like, damn, I'd let things fell off a bit. So it was a shock to me, but it was good.
Yeah, it's definitely been a shock, I think, for everyone. It's not an easy time to try to find, that, where you can be consistent with things, because it seems like nothing's consistent at this time. And pushing back the Olympics now and all that stuff, like it just completely throws the cycle off. But definitely looking forward to seeing how you're able to compete when meets get to being more consistent, and as we get closer to the Olympic year. But it's been an awesome conversation. Like it's great talking to you. I know that I've seen you at meets a couple times, competing, and it's been awesome going from seeing you at competing at Akron to now being national champion. But hey, if somebody was looking to catch up more on you, where could they find you? Maybe on social media or something like that.
For sure. I use Instagram more than anything. I have a Facebook, I have Twitter, but I really don't use either that much. So Instagram I'm pretty sure it's Matt Ludwig _23. Pretty simple. Yeah, check it out. Give it a follow. Send me some messages. Honestly, I don't know if there's what fellow vaulters are watching, but send some messages, send your videos, ask for feedback if that's something you're interested in, because I'm happy to do it. I love working with the next generation of vaulters and the young guys, and keeping everybody motivated and excited about the sport, because ultimately if we don't do it, not a lot of people are going to keep growing the sport. So it's exciting to be a part of it.
Exactly. Well, thanks again, Matt, for sitting down with me. It's always great talking to you. And thank you for everyone that's listening. This has been another episode of Innovators Anonymous. If you'd like to follow us on getting any updates on the channel, make sure you follow us on Instagram at innovators.anonymous. Have a whole bunch of updates on the show to let you know what kind of content's coming up next, and give you some, past throwbacks. Make sure that you like, rate, share, follow, all that good stuff. It lets us know that you're enjoying the channel. Have a good one, and peace.